floods, severe storms, hurricanes, earthquakes, tidal waves, and other catastrophes, all of these can cause serious damage to highways and roads. In order to quickly repair the damage to roads on the federal aid systems, Congress has set up an emergency fund. The Emergency Relief Program is like an insurance policy to help pay for repairing serious damage to the nation's most important roads. The Federal Highway Administration administers this program through state highway agencies. In addition to funding for state roads, funds also are made available to counties and cities for damaged federal aid roads they maintain. Since the program's inception in 1958, over $2 billion have been used from this fund to repair damaged highways on the federal aid systems. The cost to repair damages in an average disaster where emergency relief funds are used is about $6 million. This videotape presentation will discuss how the Emergency Relief Program works for roads on the federal aid systems. The Emergency Relief Program is for two kinds of damage: damage due to natural disaster and damage due to a catastrophic failure. These will be discussed in a few minutes. Of course, emergency relief funds will not necessarily be available for all damage repair costs. For instance, there's a $100 million limit for any single disaster in any one state. Also, emergency relief funds are not to take the place of other federal aid, state, or local funds for new construction. Emergency relief funds are not meant for increasing capacity. They are not for correcting non-disaster related deficiencies, nor for otherwise improving highway facilities. Before emergency relief funds can be used, the Federal Highway Administrator must make a finding. This is done by a review of the damages, as documented by a field report. A good field report is essential to this effort. Now, let's assume that a significant disaster has occurred. The first thing to be done, of course, is to protect the public welfare. The public official's first consideration is the safety of the public. Work should start immediately to get the affected roads open to traffic. Then, as soon as time permits, the state highway agency should send a notice of intent to the Federal Highway Administration's Division Administrator. The application may be only a notice that the state is seeking emergency relief funds. It does not need to specify the amount or other details. The Federal Highway Administration Division Office will acknowledge the state's letter of intent in writing. This assures the state that temporary operations, emergency repairs, and preliminary engineering may proceed without prior authorization. The state, local agencies, and the Federal Highway Administration's Division Office should complete a disaster assessment to decide if a situation might qualify for emergency relief. This will evaluate the extent of the natural disaster or magnitude of catastrophic failure. When serious damage has occurred to highways and bridges on federal aid systems, the governor issues a disaster proclamation. The state highway agency often prepares information for the governor's proclamation. Then, if emergency relief is approved, the state handles the work much like regular federal aid, except on an emergency expedited basis. Counties and cities have front-line responsibility for roads they maintain. Reopening roads to traffic is the first priority. As soon as possible, local officials should contact the state highway agency. Usually, this will be part of their emergency preparedness plan coordinated by civil defense officials. Just like a deductible clause on an insurance policy, the ER program is not going to fully fund all damage. In some cases, none at all. As a result, state and local highway agencies can expect budget impacts and changes in project priorities, as well as inconvenience to motorists. How then can we decide when federal emergency relief funds are appropriate for a particular disaster? One way is to determine if damage costs are unusually high. This is a measure of the extent of damage. If a state's total estimated cost of work necessary to correct potential emergency relief eligible sites is less than $500,000 for a disaster, this indicates relatively minor damage. This and most other aspects of the program are outlined in detail in the Emergency Relief Disaster Assistance Manual. It's available by contacting the Federal Highway Administration's Division Office in your state. We mentioned earlier that there are two major types of damage covered by the Emergency Relief Program: damage from a natural disaster and damage from catastrophic failure. To qualify, a natural disaster must have caused serious highway damage over a widespread area. If it's confined to a localized situation, or if it's a frequent or anticipated occurrence, the state should look for other sources of funds. A catastrophic failure must be due to an external cause. It must not be the result of an inherent flaw in the facility. It must be a sudden occurrence which results in road closure. An eligible catastrophic failure causes a disastrous impact on transportation services. Here are 2 points to look for in a natural disaster situation. Was the natural occurrence sudden, unusual, and did it cause serious damage?